World War III, the brand new album available now, featuring Save Some Titty Milk for Me and I Like Smoking Pot a Lot.
This guy's amazing. Because he bankrolled it all himself. He's got like full licensing and everything like that on it too.
He's got a podcast. Welcome back to Poutine Politics, Canadian issues served with cheese curds. My name's Adam.
My name's Mike.
And today, I'm going to talk about British Columbia.
And the cleaning up of British Columbia?
The cleaning up of British Columbia, yes.
Because we have to do the clean version of this now?
Yes, we have to clean up British Columbia. One $20 bill at a time. All right? I'm talking about money laundering.
Mm-hmm.
I'm focusing specifically on casinos and the money laundering that had been going on in the casinos in BC. This isn't new. It's something that was going on for a long time. But the commission, the Cullen Commission as it's called, has just gotten started in BC, which is like the government-led commission that's looking into all of the different forms of money laundering that has been happening in BC over the last, from my research, looks like at least 10 or 15 years. And there's a lot of different facets to this because there has been the casinos, there's been real estate. Apparently there's been money laundering through luxury cars, horse racing, like a whole bunch of different ventures.
Yeah, when you're doing money laundering, you're doing it through as many multiple ways as you possibly can to try to lower trigger mechanisms to avoid radar.
The reason why I picked the casinos, there are two reasons, I guess, why I picked the casinos. One, because it was honestly the easiest one to find information about. And two, because Mike used to work in a casino.
I did used to work in a casino.
So before I really went into the facts that I could find in regards to what was going on with money laundering in the casinos in BC, I figured I'd maybe ask you a couple of questions because you worked in the cash bank part of the casino.
Yeah, because you technically worked in the casino too, but not very helpful.
No, I worked in IT, so I had nothing to do with the cash. How long has it been since you worked there now?
Well, 11 years.
When you were working at an actual window.
Yeah, we're dealing with the public, yeah.
Right, dealing with the public. Someone comes up with cash and wants chips.
So
what were the rules there? What were the limitations at the time?
So the general rules were that if anybody was bringing up anything over $2,500 and in cash, chips, whatever the case may be, we had to record it, a visual observation. It was generalized. It wasn't very specific, but you try to keep an accurate tab as much as you could. If you got a player's card number, it was better, like an actual identifier. Sometimes you knew the people.
Especially if they were regular players, right?
That's right. There was an automatic paperwork that had to be done, and it required a lot of information. If over the course of a gambling day, 10,000 was triggered,
right? Either
through accumulation or one time only.
Okay.
And that was either giving in money or taking money out. And there was two different forms for it for some reason. I don't know why, but there's two different forms for it.
Yep.
Those were the standard forms.
Okay.
If you suspected something was odd, and what they said was odd was if somebody came up with more than 200 bills of any denomination.
Oh, 200 bills. Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Then another form was triggered automatically. Now, you didn't have to have the 200 bills to trigger it. You could do it in different ways because, 205s is $1,000.
$1,000, yeah.
But
it's still, it would still be odd. It's still odd for someone to come up with more than $205 bills.
Yeah.
Right?
So like if they came up with 195 and then 195 in tens, and you're like, alarm balls are going off like crazy in your head. Like obviously this person knows the rules and circumvents them.
Yep.
So those are the things that instantaneously triggered it. But I would imagine, going back to the money laundering, I would imagine people attempted to do something through my casino because at the time there was basically two at the time.
Yeah.
However, it was very well regulated, so I can't you could do certain amounts, but the amount of effort that you would have to go into it, like if you played the same thing every day and you didn't play, you got flagged.
Right.
Right. And it wasn't me. I know that people that I didn't know what their job was necessarily, but I knew for a fact that there was people up in surveillance that when you wrote something down, they were triggered, and they could zoom into your individual handwriting to find out what you're writing down. So if they thought somebody was a player, they could just zoom in, fast forward, rewind, do everything like that. So I had backup and surveillance to try and figure out what I was doing, and they would target them.
Yeah.
because they didn't want to be a place for money laundering. They wanted to discourage it as much as possible.
Oh, of course.
So,
It makes sense.
And so we would occasionally get a call saying, if this person comes back up again, you need to do this form.
Right.
Before you can release any money.
Right. And that was either cash in or cash out, right?
Yeah. If they wanted chips or if they wanted cash.
Yeah.
Or tokens. Like I said, you could do it,
Mm-hmm.
but you had to fly underneath the radar big time.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to really know. I mean, sure they did, but like it wasn't, the free-for-all that I heard that BC was.
Well, yeah.
When I heard about the BC one, I was like, wait, what? How did, and as far as I knew, the laws were from Canada, not Ontario.
Yeah. So when I was researching this, part of the information in an article that I was reading, it was a global news article, is the fact that while money laundering, because it's a criminal code issue, generally has like a federal mandate to it. The rules in regards to casinos are managed on a provincial level because the casinos are provincially regulated, right? Because they're regulated through the lottery commissions.
Yes.
Okay, let me kind of go to sort of what the start of this situation was, or as close to a start as I could find. Okay? Because again, out in BC, this kind of stuff, I guess, had been going on since like the mid 2000s. At least.
Yes.
Okay. And obviously, as with any sort of, money laundering scheme, it has its ties to organized crime. And whether it's proceeds of illegal drugs or sex work or, anything of that nature, like this is where this money is coming from. Mm. Okay. And obviously with the idea with money laundering is you're taking this dirty money and you're converting it into clean money in some way, shape or form. What was happening is, so a lot of this organized crime in BC and in let's say the Lower Mainland area, so Vancouver and environs, is Asian. Yeah. A lot of Chinese influence, but we'll just say Asian influence to not necessarily target a specific ethnic group or whatever, right? Part of what would happen in regards to the casinos is not necessarily that the criminal organizations would organize this, but they would have their ties back in China or whatever parts of Asia, that there were these, let's say wealthy people that were traveling to British Columbia. And they would, and these people, they like to gamble. Gambling is kind of, it's almost like somewhat part of their culture. Yeah. Right? So part of the issue is, part of what I learned during this is that China itself puts a limitation as to how much money someone can take out of the country. A Chinese national can only buy up to $50,000 US in foreign funds per year from banks in the country. So there's obviously a limitation as to how much foreign funds then you're going to have when you leave the country. And then I think there's also like a limitation there as well in regards to, like I said, how much money they can then take out of the country at one time, unless they have there's like a paperwork process that they can go through with the government to say, they're taking it out of the country because of, for business purposes, they've got certain expenses they need to pay, that they need cash in whatever currency it is that country uses or something like that. And that's why they're taking the money out of the country.
Right.
Okay. So these people, they're not bringing money from China. They're coming to Canada, or they were coming to Canada. And then before they got to the casino, they would receive a bag of cash, basically, from someone because they were taking a loan to take this cash to the casino, go in, cash it in at the counter, go and play. The popular game was Baccarat, because that's a high roller game.
Yep.
Some of these people would play for a little while. Some of these people would play for a longer while. But the idea was that they'd play. Hopefully they'd win. They'd go back. They'd cash out. They were generally recommended from the people that gave them the cash that when they cash out, they need to get a check. And then check gets cashed. Loan shark gets paid back. They keep the profits, essentially.
Right.
I'm sure there's some cut, obviously, in there that the loan sharks would say, we're going to lend you this money, but we're going to take whatever percentage of the winnings, because obviously they want to make a profit on that money as well as launder the money and make it clean. Mm-hmm. quite a bit of the research that I got here ended up being from a W5 special that came out last year.
Ooh.
It's actually on YouTube. Like you can, like it seems like you can watch almost any W5 episode on YouTube. They had there were surveillance videos from this casino where people are coming in with these bags of cash. And they've got like overhead inside the cash bank, like inside the cash window, with these big stacks of like $20 bills and $50 bills and stuff like that. And it's like, you know what like a bank stack of bills looks like, right? Where they've got like the paper kind of wrapped around them, and it's like this is a denomination of $10,000 in $50 bills or something like that, or $100 bills. These would be like wads of cash. I'm holding my feet my feet. I'm holding my hands about a foot apart. And it's like that was a stack of $20 bills held together by big rubber bands.
Yeah, because how it works, for me doing it for far too many years, is that each strap has 100 bills in it, with the exception of the $100 bills, which only have 50 bills in it. But anyway, each strap, generally speaking, has 100 bills in it.
Yeah.
Then you bundle it with elastic bands for every 5. So that's instantaneously 10,000. Now, I can guarantee you at my casino, anyone who showed up with a bag of cash would be instantaneously flagged.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's no question. Like, there's no procedure where I could think of where I'd be like, it's okay. It's fine.
Yeah, whatever. Big bag of cash? No question. I mean, come on. Who doesn't carry that kind of cash around every day? Right. Especially in a bag. I mean, briefcase, whatever.
I used to always joke with people. I'm like, I've carried $3 million in my arms before. And people are like, wow. I'm like, it's not what you think.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I don't know anyone that has brick money, but apparently these people do.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And it looks like bricks.
Yes.
It really does. Right? And like, like the amount of time it would take, I wouldn't want to verify that. It would suck.
Yeah.
He'd be sitting there going,
keep putting it through the machine, see how much it is. Like I'm watching this W5 episode, and I'm seeing like the surveillance videos of like, and it's people walking in with like, they look like those reusable grocery bags full of cash, and just walking up to the window, and like they start handing the stacks of cash over. And the people working at the casino, I mean, again, you'd think the average person would be like, this is wrong, and maybe that is what's going through their head, but at the same time, it's like, what do you do? They did have a process in place, especially with their what was the unit called? The BC Gaming Policy Enforcement Branch, which short form GPEB. So they had like a process in place where eventually, where if someone came in with a large amount of cash, it was recorded, and there was like a not a report, but like a little statement essentially that would go to the GPEB to say someone came in with $50,000 in cash, and here was the denominations, and that information would go to the policy enforcement branch, and was supposed to be overseen by the BC Lottery Corporation, and it was essentially the way that I from articles reading and watching the video, it's like it was kind of brushed off because, for lack of better explanation, it's like, well, they're bringing all this money into the casino, which is then money that's going into the provincial coffers. So why do we want to limit this money being spent at the casinos? Because the government's making money.
Yeah. Like, I remember it was, because it wasn't like the Liberal government got in like so many times in a row, and then the NDP got in? Is that what?
Well, so the NDP won the last election in BC in 2017.
Yeah, and that's what triggered it.
Right. Well, they're the ones that have ended up triggering like this commission and everything into the money laundering, and they're the ones that started putting in changes in rules to limit how much cash someone could essentially buy at the casino when they go to the casino. When they go up to the window. So, case in point. This was happening while the Liberals were still in place in BC. So in late 2013, the BC Lottery Corporation requested an increase in VIP betting for Baccarat, specifically for Baccarat, in time for Chinese New Year, to maximize casino revenues. Before this time, the maximum per hand bet was $5,000. Okay. As a comparison, and this was in the Global News article that I mentioned earlier, most other provinces at the time didn't have high limit betting. And even as a comparison, again, because you worked in the OLG system, had a maximum limit of $100 bet per hand on table games, except for maybe something like poker.
Did we have $100? No.
That's I'm taking this from the article. Like maybe it was at the time. This was in 2013. So I think this was probably after you were working at the casino, right?
No, they have to have, because I had chips that were higher, so they have to have it.
Well, I think you can bring more than that to the table, but the idea was that you could only bet that much on a hand at a time.
Maybe, I don't know.
Right?
I don't know. I didn't actually notice the table game, so that could be correct. I have no idea. I'm just thinking that we have $5,000 chips, so why would we carry them if you can't bet them?
I don't know. I think of now obviously something like Las Vegas is different, right? Because Las Vegas does have minimums and maximums, and I remember playing at a craps table that had, you could make a maximum bet of like $5,000. But then usually if you were playing with smaller amounts, that you would have smaller chips that they would give you. Like they'd give you like the $5, $10, and $25 chips, and it was only when you cashed out that they'd give you the larger chips depending on how much money you had, right?
I suppose.
But it was very rarely that while someone was playing, they would give them a $500 chip.
I suppose.
Right?
That's probably true. I don't know. That would make a lot of sense.
Again, this is back late 2013. So Lottery Corporation makes this request because they want to increase the VIP betting, which the GPEB, so that Gaming Policy Enforcement Branch, was against. Okay, they're like, this is not a good idea. We want to limit these big cash transactions because we know that there's an issue. The problem also at this time is that a lot of the anti-money laundering units with the RCMP and other enforcement units were basically either underfunded or non-existent at this time in the province.
That makes sense.
So this enforcement branch was like the only group that had any sort of control over it. But the problem is that because they were a part of the BC Lottery Corporation and not part of any sort of law enforcement, there was very little that they could do.
Yeah, they can scream all they want to, but eventually they're not the ones in charge.
So it was this enforcement branch, this GPEB, that was supposed to approve the changes to limits that were allowed to be spent at table games. And then the Ministry of Finance stepped in and allowed the Lottery Corporation to increase high roller bet limits from $5,000 a hand to $100,000 per hand.
Of course, why not?
Why not?
Chinese New Year's, let's celebrate.
Exactly. And that was
in style.
Yes, and that was kind of it. It's like we want these people to, one, we want them to spend a lot of money to have fun, but two, we want them to spend a lot of money because we want to generate, record amounts of revenue for the government from the casinos. Never mind the fact that this problem of people coming in with large bags of cash had already been happening for years at this point. Let's just give them another incentive to get more people in there with this dirty money.
Yep.
And make it easy for them to convert it.
Yep.
Or easy for them to make more money.
No,
well,
whichever.
potentially easier, I guess. Obviously, it's a casino, so, you take your risks, but yeah.
When you're money laundering, you know that you're going to lose some of the money in the money laundering process.
Probably, yes.
So if you come out 95% effective, you're up, and the casino looks at it, well, I still gain 5% off of whatever, so I'm up.
Well, and I think the other thing there too is let's say if a player loses money, the only person losing in that scenario is the player. Because the organized crime elements, they're going to get their money back.
Yep.
They're going to get their money from the player. It's, we lent you $100,000. You came back with 90. Get us the other 10 with interest or whatever, right? Like they're going to get their money.
Yeah.
And the casino gets their money and says, hey, look at all these. This change happened. And what a surprise. BC Lottery Corporation from their casino arms starts making record amounts of revenue.
Gee, what a shock.
Genius.
We're going to turn a blind eye and we'll be fine.
Yeah. So then to top it all off, there was, and I think from my reading they still exist because unfortunately there was a raid and a project that the RCMP ran that kind of tried to bring down some of the organized crime elements in regards to the casino stuff, which unfortunately didn't go as planned because of not incorrect information, but like sensitive information from the operation ended up in evidence for the defense. And it was essentially the case fell apart. So the name of the operation was called E-Pirate.
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 Yar.
And this was in October of 2015. So it was a company. So the name of the company was raided in this Project E-Pirate was called Silver International.
Okay.
So this Silver International company was essentially running an illegal bank for all of these, for all of this organized crime and money laundering and stuff like that. At the time of the raid, they had I think it was $7.5 million in cash just in this office in a relatively nondescript looking office building. Perfect. And the money, the information apparent, I guess, that the RCMP found through this Project E-Pirate, because obviously they confiscate computers and paperwork and stuff like that, and they were able to determine that I can't remember it. I didn't make a note to say how many years or if they had determined how many years it had been going on, but figured that one illegal bank alone was moving over $200 million per year in illegally obtained cash.
It's fine.
I just really, the problem is that in the end result, while I wouldn't necessarily say that it was complicity, you could almost look at it as the BC Lottery Corporation and the provincial government of British Columbia was somewhat complicit in this, because there were definitely people that knew there was a problem and they weren't acting on it.
No, they weren't doing anything. They were tying their hands so that way they wouldn't have to deal with it, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I first heard about this and I was like, wait, what? They don't have to go through this? Because I was always told when I was getting trained on it, back in my cashiering days, this was Canada-wide. It was because of the terrorist threats and things like that. That's why we had these different forms, and it was all through, I think I can say it's FinTrack.
Yes, it was FinTrack.
Yeah.
I remember FinTrack was a part of one of the stories here.
And I'm like, all these forms came from FinTrack. So I was like, when I heard about this BC story, it's like, where was FinTrack in this?
Yeah.
Right? We were told by FinTrack, not from the OLGC or whatever it was. I can't remember which. I think it was AGCO at the time.
Yeah, it might have been AGCO at the time, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was AGCO.
That's the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario, for anybody that doesn't know.
Right. So when it came through the AGCO, we were all told it was from FinTrack. Everything we did was for FinTrack, right?
Yeah.
There was even a special terrorist one that we had. And I was like, what?
Well, I mean...
We got trained on it. We're like, you have to know about the terrorist one. And I was like, okay. So if Osama comes in my thing, I'm going to be like, terrorist.
Yeah, what are you supposed to do? Yell out to security and I duck?
Listen, it was something basically they put in place to appease somebody.
Yeah.
From what I gathered.
Right.
But yeah, I'd never seen it. Because how would you know? The burden of proof was on us. So how did we know?
Well, and this, I mean, this is where you can look at the employees that are working, at the cash counter. You can't blame them.
No, because they're doing their told.
Right.
If you told me that it was okay to bring in that amount of money and for me to process it, I'd be like, okay, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It's not my problem.
Right.
Right. I might ring alarms to whoever I could to figure out the way of dealing with it. But it's like most things, the amount of compliance that people have for wrongdoing is amazing. I can't remember the study that was done, but it was done by the Nazis back in the 30s, where they basically hooked up people to electrodes. Mm-hmm. Well, they simulated it, so actually nobody was on the opposite end, but
right.
they were just hooked up to electrodes, and people could basically go all the way up. If they lied, they could zap them, and it went all the way up to kill, and people would get to 95% of the way. 80% of the population would get to 95%. And they found that out, wow, that's amazing. So a lot of people are compliant. If I was working at a job and I was getting paid very well, and I knew I couldn't do much, would I turn blind eye? Yes, I would.
Yeah, because the choice you have in that situation is you either do your job or you lose it.
Or you quit.
Yeah.
Right? Those are your options. And I work at the casino, I did have those days where I was like, do I want to be a corporate mechanism in gambling?
Right.
And those are the harder days for me to work because I really didn't like it. Mm-hmm. But at the same point in time, it did pay well. So, it is what it is. But I didn't feel like I was a part of a money laundering scheme by any means. So I don't know the morality of people in BC. But then again, it's one of those things where, if they pay you well, money does a lot of things for a lot of people. And I mean, it sure might have corrupted the people in the front line. They're not as held as responsible because they didn't have any mechanisms to combat it.
Yeah.
It's not like they were told not to do anything. They were told to like, well, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Well, and the thing is too, like from watching the W5 special, because they actually talked to the guy who ended up being like the whistleblower on this whole casino money laundering thing. He said the fact that, you know, his responsibility was kind of not with security per se, but, you know, like it was overseeing this kind of stuff. And he would raise these kinds of questions to his higher ups, to whether it was in, you know, the BC Lottery Commission or anything like that. And it was kind of like a sweep it under the rug. That's like, you know, it's not that big of a deal. It's okay. Just, you know, just monitor it and everything will be fine. Right. Like it was essentially just like pushed off as much as possible. Now the NDP government is in BC. Like I said, they've been in since 2017. Yep. And they have been looking into the money laundering thing more so. I guess the Liberals, and it was probably like a just slightly pre-election kind of thing. They wanted to look like they were being more serious about it. Because even though the RCMP's integrated illegal gambling enforcement team, so this was very specifically for anti-money laundering and gambling, it got shut down in 2009.
Yeah.
Basically, the government at the time said, sorry, we don't have the funding for this anymore. And it got shut down. So from 2009 until April of 2017, the RCMP was not running an anti-money laundering unit for gambling. So what I guess the Liberals introduced before they got voted out was this joint illegal gaming enforcement team. And I guess they were trying, you know, again, it's like we're going to do this. We know there's an election coming up. We need to look like we're taking this seriously. And, you know, I believe, I thought I read somewhere that even that new team got disbanded. No, maybe that was the original one that got disbanded in 2009. Either way, you know, the NDP are in. There's a public government commission now going on that's looking into all the money laundering that's going on in BC. And I mean, real estate's a big part of it, obviously. I mean, a lot. It seems like, maybe not like a huge percentage of what's going on with the ridiculous real estate prices in you know, Vancouver and the Lower Mainland right now is tied to money laundering, but there's a good enough chunk of it. There's a lot of cash that's being cleaned through real estate.
It's also not insignificant either.
Right, exactly. You know, when we're talking about like condos that are selling for like $1 million plus, that's a pretty decent single transaction to clean a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
that's what lawyers are for.
Yes, exactly. And there were definitely some law firms that were complicit in this as well.
For sure.
So, I'm thinking about doing some research in regards to the real estate side of things and doing another episode on that, but we'll see, because it's kind of depressing. Anyways, this has been Money Laundering and Casinos in BC from Poutine Politics. My name is Adam.
My name is Mike.
We'll talk to you soon.